Welcome back to OpenLine, talking about Hurricane Matthew with Red Cross. Joel Sullivan with us, Regional Chief Executive Officer for the Tennessee region. Let's go to the phones. Let's go to Jay. Hello, Jay. Jay, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Go right ahead.
Good evening. I just appreciate what that gentleman and his volunteers do. I know my mother, I give when I can. I mean, I gave the other day, but my mother, she gives monthly. And I encourage everybody to give what they can, because, I mean, these people really, really work hard. And I know where I'm from, we had a tornado hit, and the Red Cross helped out. And my mother has been hooked on volunteering ever since, because the power company and everyone staged their trucks on our family's farm. And my mom got to cooking for everyone, and she really loves that. But I just want to encourage everyone that can volunteer and give. And I'll hang up and listen. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, Jay.
That was pretty good.
Absolutely.
So he's saying you start doing this, and it just gets in you.
Absolutely. I started as a volunteer in 2006, so that was between Katrina and Gustav, and saw the need. I had been on the board in the 90s and thought, I want to go volunteer again. I want to do the work. Rubber meets the road. Mm-hmm. And started volunteering and got hooked on it. I mean, and then the next thing you know, I'm running a shelter at one of our great partners at Lipscomb University, and learning how the process works. And a lot of times you're bootstrapping. It's like, well, I've never done this before, but you just kind of know what to do because you're helping people.
Yeah.
The answer usually is, what would you do if that happened to your neighbor? If your neighbor's house burned, what would you do? And that's kind of the rule of thumb, is you're probably going to do close to what's right and within guidelines that we provide.
How are you doing as far as volunteers? Do you have enough? Do you need more? How many do you have to turn some away? Like, where are you as far as volunteers?
Volunteers are always in need. Yeah, as volunteers come and go for different reasons. Lifestyles change. People get married and can't volunteer as much, while others have spare time and time to do things. So there's always a need for volunteers, and especially when you get these large events. We now have event-based volunteers, so that we can call volunteers in at a moment's notice who have never volunteered with the Red Cross, but we can get them in and let them start volunteering after a class or two and start learning how the Red Cross works while they're volunteering.
So your last mission was Baton Rouge, is that right? The flooding in Louisiana?
That was my last personal
that you actually went there.
Activity, yes.
All right, so walk us through that. You know, when do you get the call, and how long are you down there, and kind of just walk us through that.
So that was an unplanned event. They didn't expect it. We knew it was going to rain, and then it just sat there and rained and rained and rained. And in Louisiana, in that particular part of Louisiana, there's a lot of creeks and marshes and dams and levees, and that didn't let the water out as fast as it needed to go out. So a lot of cities flooded. In fact, I think it was Livingston County is the one Livingston Parish is the one we saw on the news a lot. And 60% of the homes there were damaged or destroyed, and 80% of the people had nowhere to go. And Livingston Parish, which is just below Baton Rouge, was the same way. But there were 29 parishes, which are our counties, 29 parishes that were affected with flooding. So we got the call to send volunteers, join my counterpart, and I went as a government relations liaison. So worked with the political figures and the EMA directors, emergency management directors, and determined what the needs were, where shelters need to be, and opened up the agreements, started working with our partners like the Salvation Army, and for Nashville would be Second Harvest Food Bank. So the call went out, we need volunteers. We send out the email, get the volunteers engaged, get them going, and then they needed, we sent some of our executive directors down to be those people on the ground that could determine where the needs were, and kind of what I call ground truth. Mm-hmm. is we heard this, is it true? Because we really like to operate on what are the facts rather than hearsay, and hearsay can get you in trouble really quick in a disaster. If you make a decision based on hearsay, it could go wrong quickly.
And there is a lot of information flying around.
Absolutely.
So you want to, I bet that is true, you want to really verify what's actually happening.
Yeah. I mean, I could say there's a live wire on the ground and it's sparking all over the place, and somebody goes to verify it, and it's a telephone line which has no danger to it at all, other than maybe wrapping around a car tire or something. So the key is know the facts of the situation and respond knowing those facts rather than guessing.
So you get down there and just emotionally, I mean, what toll does it take when you get down there and you see this? So you're saying 80% of the people, or whatever you said, have no home. I mean,
Right.
what did you think when you got down there?
Well, when you go out and see it, once again, ground truthing, it's like, wow, this is huge. And it affected a lot of people. And when you go in a shelter and there's thousands of people in the shelter, you're like, wow, what do they do? How are they feeling? And I think what you saw was Louisiana was strong, and they were taking care of each other, and they had assistance from many agencies, whether it be emergency management agencies that were doing the rescue work, whether it was the volunteers of the Red Cross, the other agencies, and their government did a great job.
And that's good to hear.
Absolutely. It's a partnership. What people don't understand is no one organization can do everything. And if you look at the FEMA system, the Incident Command System, and NIMS, there are like 16 different functions. So the Red Cross is part of the ESF-6, and that's humanitarian need. So when you look to the Red Cross in disaster, you look for humanitarian need stuff, food, clothing, shelter, mental health, those type things. If you look to other areas, it might be transportation, it could be agriculture. I mean, if you think of all the animals that were affected in Louisiana, they actually had a whole center set up for agriculture. Dogs, cats, goats, horses, all of it. So it's everybody that trains together in the preparation phase before disasters strike.
And I think what you would have another unique perspective on, a lot of us see these things in the news. They're in the news for a couple of days, and then the news is gone.
Right.
It's not in the news anymore. So Baton Rouge, for example, what's happening there now? You know, what's going on a month, 2 months after it's in the news?
Well, the disaster is an emergency up to a certain point, and so you have short-term emergency sheltering needs. As that process is working out from the disaster forward, there are already people working on what are the long-term sheltering needs. So let's get people back to the parishes or counties that they live in so we get a good head count. And how are we going to house these people moving forward? Because the American Red Cross is the short-term solution with sheltering, but people don't want to stay in a shelter any longer than they have to. So with that many homes destroyed, what do? I think in Katrina you saw all the trailers were going down.
Right.
So what are the solutions? And Louisiana's government came up with several solutions that they're working through right now. In fact, last week we just closed the last 2 shelters.
That's good.
So that's good news because everyone now has somewhere to go or call home other than a shelter.
How would you rate our country's response capability? All of it together. I mean, you've seen it, unlike most people. So, all right, we're now responding to Hurricane Matthew, and there's terrible flooding all around North Carolina, as you said. How do we do?
I think we do a great job. And it's people taking care of people is really what it amounts to, and that's where the Red Cross plays a strong role, is we encourage people to prepare for that disaster. What are you going to do when you lose your utilities, your car, when you lose everything but your family for the first 3 to 5 days? What's that look like? And how do you prepare for that? And then you've got great partners like Salvation Army, Goodwill, Hands on Nashville, I could go on and on, that work with the government agencies, like in Tennessee, the Tennessee Emergency Management Agency, constantly working what's going on, what could happen, what would we do then. And as you see, it takes the federal government a little longer to respond, obviously, because they're coming from further distances, but they're also waiting on that ground truth. What do you really need? So it's incumbent for the individual to be prepared. And if the individual is prepared, such as yourself, then you can take care of your family, and if your family's taken care of, you can take care of your neighborhood. What you're really trying to do is get everybody back to their normal. So
Right.
I don't know your normal, but I know I need to work to get you there. And that's where our caseworkers come in, because they meet with you. What are your needs? Did your glasses get destroyed? Where's your driver's license? It's the things you really don't think about because you didn't plan for your house to burn down or flood. So that's the opportunity for the preparedness side of it, so that when the response comes, it's always chaos, I promise. But controlled chaos plays out better because you've planned for it. You know this is going to be chaos. Here's how I'm going to respond to it. And you know you're going to have to change the game somewhere in the middle of that response.
Have you encountered, it seems like we've had a lot of disasters, you
Right.
know, and you know, the news is all over these things, and then, you know, the news is gone a few days later. But is there almost disaster fatigue when it comes to people giving at appropriate levels? You know, are they like, oh, this is another disaster, I don't know what to do, I'm overwhelmed, and they just kind of, they don't know what to do, they're paralyzed. Do you see that?
Absolutely. And you know, the Red Cross is funded by the American public, so we don't get government funding. We're chartered by Congress to take care of the humanitarian needs, but we're not funded. So we rely on foundations and corporations and individual donations to buy the assets, so to speak, to let our volunteers do the job that they do. So that's trucks, that's gas, it's comfort kits, it's cots, it's blankets, training, travel, all of those things. And when disaster after disaster strikes, everyone has a budget. And so a big disaster strikes and we get passionate about it. So some may have given to Louisiana. And the next call comes up, and it does. The East Coast is in trouble. We have hearts, we want to help. So, okay, I'll give to that. Well, now what happens if a flood hits Nashville in 2 weeks? And then we're going back to the same people. So I would say we're blessed to have donors that understand that, and sometimes they have to dig deep.
I bet. And I want to ask about Haiti. Is there another hurricane looming out there right now? Is there another tropical storm?
Funny you should ask, because as Matthew was moving up the coast, Nicole was out there
That's
as
what,
well.
yeah, Nicole, I saw that. And you
And-
said you're obviously, you follow the weather.
I tend to enjoy tracking the weather.
So
it's
what's-
great for my job, by the way.
What's the deal with that? I mean, what's the deal with Nicole? What are they saying?
Well, Nicole actually was coming up and was going to go and turn back out. And if you'll recall, Matthew was supposed to turn back down and come back into the Caribbean. Luckily, that didn't happen, which ended up pushing Nicole out. And I think she did go up near Bermuda. And now they're all just moving on.
Okay, so they're going to be gone.
They're headed out. They're not our problem anymore.
All right, good.
Hurricane season goes through November 30th.
Right.
September is your peak month, so we're hoping we're on the downside, and according to the weather resources that I've looked at, we don't expect anything, at least for the next week, to form or happen. But in the Gulf of Mexico with the hot water, it could pop up in 2 days if the right conditions are right.
All right, I want to take a break, come back. I want to talk about Haiti and
Okay.
the Red Cross response in Haiti. Take a break. Be back right after this.